Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Welcome to WeRallOK Wednesday for the second week in September, subhanAllah. And our topic today is about the myth of good stress, because a lot of people say, I need to be stressed to be motivated. Like we have this myth that we need stress. And so we're going to talk about why true motivation comes without that pressure, understanding that all stress clouds our wisdom, and real drive comes from peace, clarity, and trust in Allah, tawakkul. And so what we'll cover is that stress is always a signal, never a solution. Even when it looks like stress is pushing us to act, it actually clouds judgment, narrows perspective, and drains our energy. True motivation is born of clarity. When we act from calm and love, not fear or pressure, our efforts are more creative, sustainable, and aligned with our values. Allah didn't design us for stress. Our fitrah is peace. Well, when we're in our fitrah, we're in peace. When we rely on tawakkul, when we rely on Allah, have tawakkul and insight, we find the natural motivation and strength to do what needs to be done without stress, subhanAllah. And I have a really good example to share from last week. So I might start with that story first and then unpack it. And this has been inspired by our recent session with the psychiatrist that we're studying with currently, where he actually said that no stress is good. In other words, it is a misunderstanding that we think that it's good to be stressed. So I had a deadline. There's a chapter that I have written that is a part of an academic book, and I had a lot of thinking around it because academic writing is not my forte. And I had a lot of thinking around that I'm probably not, good enough to write a chapter. So I had written the chapter and had feedback on what needed to change, and there was a lot of rearranging needed. It was a bit scattered all over the place, a bit disorganized, the chapter, and I had some detailed notes on what I needed to do, and they were in my book, which I keep all my notes in, which I left on the plane when I was flying to Perth. So I lost all my notes, and so I had a lot of thinking around, I can't do this. And as a result, it was due at the end of July, and last week, I had so many things I needed to do, but I was having trouble even getting myself to do any of them because it was like that had to be my priority and I needed to work on it and I needed to force myself to work on it. And it's so overdue, and how embarrassing that I haven't handed it in, because I actually work quite closely with the person that I had to hand it in with, and so started to feel quite ashamed that I hadn't handed it in, and everything was becoming quite a barrier to getting anything done, not just this chapter, but anything done. And really seeing it as this massive, massive job of having to figure out and get my brain to figure out how I was going to fix this chapter, especially without my notes. SubhanAllah, I got a gentle nudge from the person that I meant to hand it up, saying, any timeline on this. And something shifted, and I just submitted to the fact and accepted the fact that I'm going to have to get this done. That all of this thinking around it wasn't helping. And I decided that's it, that the following day I was going to dedicate the whole day to the chapter. I wasn't going to put pressure on myself to do anything else. And I wasn't going to put my pressure on myself as to what time I was going to start and what hours I was going to work. I was just going to take the day as it comes with the one goal for that day of just getting it done. And so I did. I woke up. I was in this sense of calm around it. I sort of thought to myself, okay, perhaps I'll just print this out and I'll go to the park where there's the birds, and it's actually a little bit sunny for a bit, and just sit in the park and read through it with my colored pencils and scribble all over it and work out what needs to move where and highlight this and all of that. And subhanAllah, it really easily flowed. And very quickly, I could see exactly what I needed to do. And I was really excited and in a rush to get back to my computer so that I could actually get on with it and edit it. And Alhamdulillah, I did finish it. And it actually was very enjoyable. And it didn't take that long at all. And it wasn't being done under stress or duress. It was being done from a very peaceful, calm place. And there was certainly a lot of wisdom around what unfolded. In fact, there were paragraphs of the text which, because I thought they were clever, I was rather attached to them, but I realized, they didn't really belong, and I was able to just delete and they're gone. Never to be seen again, because I didn't keep copies of them or anything. I just went delete because I knew they didn't belong in there, no matter how much I thought it was clever, the wording that I'd put in there. And it was such a beautiful experience and very relevant to this topic around stress. Because while I was stressing about it, I had no clarity or way forward on the task. But when I let go and just submitted myself and accepted, how things are and just let it be, everything flowed really beautifully, alhamdulillah. And what I do find, being somebody who has most of her life thought that I needed stress to get things done, that I work best under stress. Some people might relate to these types of thoughts because they are kind of propagated. We share them almost like a badge of honor. Yes, I work well under stress. Well, yes, I do, because I having an ADHD functioning brain, there are chemical reasons why, in fact, stress looks like it's being my friend. And I say looks like because it's actually not. So let me explain what I've learned about stress and from a biological perspective, and what I've come to understand about stress and my nervous system, particularly over this last year where my nervous system has done a lot of healing. And that is that our stress mechanisms in our body, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us with those for a reason, to be able to address those moments of stress in our life. When our body is responding, as he put it, it's responding with wisdom. In other words, it's responding from the way in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created our responses to stressful situations. And that stress response is apparently not healthy if it's sustained beyond 30 minutes. That beyond 30 minutes, this is from a biological perspective I'm talking about now, that beyond 30 minutes, things start to shift biologically in our body in a not so healthy way. And if we continue these sorts of patterns, then we become hardwired to be in stress. The amygdala part of the brain, this is very much layman's terms that I am expressing this, because I didn't really study it in detail to give you the very super scientific version, but I figure if the layman's version, everybody has a chance of understanding it. But there's a part of the brain, the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that's sort of on alert for anything there is to worry about. And so it can become programmed to have stress responses that really aren't helpful, and that we can get into these high alert, high stress, long-term situations which are really causing a lot of issue with our nervous system. And then that's a domino effect with our health, with our body, like inflammation in our body can lead to all sorts of different conditions eventually in our body. So stress is, in fact, not meant to be our natural state. Now let's look at Islam. The word, in fact, Islam, is derived from the same word salam, which is peace. And there's so much about our religion that talks about peace, but let's just take one verse where it says, in the remembrance of Allah, the hearts find peace. And so our natural state is one of peace. That doesn't mean we don't have tests and challenges, and it doesn't mean that we don't have moments of stress, but it means that our natural state and the state in which we operate at our optimum is from a peaceful place, not from a stressful place. And that if we are in a stressful state, it is clouding our ability to operate with ihsan, which is with that excellence of understanding that though we can't see Allah, Allah can see everything that we do. And so it doesn't actually help. It doesn't actually help to be stressed. It is a myth to think that we need stress to be motivated. And maybe we are caught in some kind of cycle where we believe that the stress is our friend and it's helping us be activated. But if we believe that, then yes, of course, that will be how we experience things. But as I shared in my story, that used to be the way I was. But I could see just from the example last week, and that's just one of many examples, but that example last week, that the stress was not my friend. But when I submitted to it will be as it will be, and I'm just going to do this, it really happened not just in a natural way, in an enjoyable way. I actually enjoyed it. I felt excited doing it. It was such a change or shift. And it wasn't like I'm forcing myself, or it wasn't laborious doing it. So our true motivation comes from that place of calm and clarity, and not from fear and pressure, as I was saying in the introduction. And yes, we are designed to handle moments of stress, but we're not designed to be in a constant state of stress. In fact, what our teacher asked the question of us is that, we wouldn't intentionally physically harm ourselves. Like you wouldn't take a knife and intentionally cut your finger, would you? I mean, not unless there was a really, really, really good reason to. You wouldn't just do that, right? So he was saying, why then would you intentionally harm yourself by encouraging having stress as a way of getting things done or a way of getting motivated? SubhanAllah. And we live in a world that doesn't slow down anymore. Everything is so fast. And it's not surprising that as a result, we're seeing a lot of implications of that in our health, in our emotional and mental well-being, because stress is not our friend. Having our nervous systems operating in that high alert way constantly actually starts to reprogram our body, our mind, and change the way we respond to the world in an unhealthy way, because it feels as if the world is not safe, or it's operating from a mode of the world is not safe. So another way I think that just popped into my mind of even looking at that part of the puzzle is we can be safe in this world because of our understanding that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always there. That He created us, so He knows us better than we even know ourselves. He knows everything is going that's going on. Not a single leaf even falls that He's not aware of. And so anything that befalls us is meant to befall us, and anything that doesn't come our way was never meant to come our way. And that submission and acceptance of the qadr of Allah, that this is how it's meant to be, not in a defeatist manner where it's like, okay, nothing for me to do, just let the world happen, just let life happen. That's not the way we understand it as Muslims. It's not that kind of, there is a word for it, but it's sort of like defeated thinking. There is an activeness in that. The acceptance and the submission to the qadr of Allah is where we find peace and tawakkul. And from there, we find the clarity and the wisdom of exactly what it is we are meant to be doing right now. And we find ourselves just doing what it is that we're meant to be doing. We don't have to think about it, motivate ourselves. It's like, okay, this is what I'm meant to be doing right now, and we're doing it. And that's the healthy way of living this life, subhanAllah. Alhamdulillah. And so all the resources that we need, whether it's in our physical selves, whether it's in knowledge, whether it's in actual tools or whatever, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the provider, and He provides us with everything. So there's no need for us to be stressed. One of the beautiful things He said, because someone was asking the question, isn't it normal? And He always corrects that question, because of course normal's not what we're aiming for. We're aiming for healthy, because there's a lot about what is normal that's not healthy these days. And so this lady was asking the question, isn't it normal to be worried and stressed, for instance, about your kids? And his response was really interesting and beautiful. He said, I love my daughters too much to worry about them. How cool is that? And at first thought, you might think, oh, that doesn't make sense, because not to worry seems like not to care. But not to worry actually means having trust in Allah. Not to worry is true faith. And then when we're in that state of non-worry, non-stress, we can have that love and compassion and beautiful connection with our loved ones. It's often the stress and the worry that has us treating them in a way that isn't okay, has us saying things from a place of stress that isn't okay, that is perhaps bringing tension and disconnect into the relationship. So when He says that, He really means it. He loves His daughters too much to worry about them. He has absolute faith. Faith in, I mean, this particular teacher is actually Christian, so it's not in the same way perhaps, or understanding that we have Islamically, but if we look at it from our Islamic perspective, it's having absolute faith in the qadr of Allah, in Allah, in the fact that Allah is there for us, and that all power and might is with Allah, and that He will never burden us with more than we can bear. And in remembering all of that, we will find our sense of peace, no matter what's going on. So really, when we feel stressed, and it's lasting longer than a few moments, because now that we know this, we're not going to stop ourselves having moments of stress. This is not what it's about, right? We're not here to stop feelings. We're here to have the feelings and understand that that is a natural part of a human being. Not be scared of those feelings. recognize any lessons that from those feelings. So lessons meaning, am I turning away from Allah and that's why I'm feeling stressed? Have I forgotten Allah? Is that why I'm feeling stressed? That's what I mean by lessons, not um lessons like, oh, I'm stressed. This person needs to do something differently because they're stressing me out. No, not that sort of thing. That acceptance of the qadr of Allah that something's happening right now. And yes, I'm going through the feelings relating to it. And then it will take its natural course and we'll be back into our healthy state again. SubhanAllah. It takes so much work out of it, doesn't it? Because it's not about work. Actually, the work we're meant to be doing is the work in earning as much reward as we possibly can of this dunya, in earning reward from Allah, so that on the day of judgment, our scale is so heavy with the good deeds that we've done. That's the work of this dunya, not the work around feelings, not the work around I have to be stressed and push myself, because we've almost made that like that's something to be proud of. Oh, I did all this hard work to make myself. Well, no, let go of that, because save that energy for where it counts. Save it for earning reward from Allah rather than fighting your own self. SubhanAllah. So I'm going to open it up for questions. Has anyone got a question or a takeaway from what I shared today?
Yeah, I actually had a question, and that question is, in this very fast-paced environment of expectations of doing in work and studies and relationships and stuff like that, how do you do that with also like being as calm and stuff like that? Because I feel like even the external is not helping.
We have to make a choice, I think. We have to be intentional. Like everything is meant to be intentional from an Islamic standpoint, isn't it? Because actions are by intentions, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to judge us not by our looks or anything from the external. He's going to judge us by what our intentions were and what our actions were. So I think it's about becoming intentional. Alhamdulillah. Sorry about that. Alhamdulillah. It's that season. We're coming into spring here, so it's starting to be sneasel season.
So even if you have so much and it's very fast-paced, but if you're coming from that, intention and trying to be calm with that, even though so many things would also feel not stressful.
Because when you're really intentional and present in the moment, you're only focusing on one thing and all the other things aren't in focus. And then it becomes calm because you're not trying in your mind to juggle everything. It's like that. So if you go back to my story, I had lots and lots and lots of things that needed to be done, and a lot of emails and messages coming in. Can you do this? I need this, blah, blah, blah. But I made a very intentional decision that the only thing I was going to worry about doing that day was that book chapter. And so it flowed. Now, I got other things done that day, but it wasn't. It was about intentionally prioritizing that. And so I didn't feel it as stressful. I actually felt it as enjoyable.
Um, that's one step at a time.
Yeah, it's about presence in the moment, where often the stress relating to, for instance, workload or expectations that are around you are coming from futuristic thinking of imagining how ashamed we will feel if we don't get it done or we don't meet expectations, or like we're kind of creating that sense of shame. Shame's a horrible, horrible emotion. I mean, astaghfirullah, perhaps that's not a good thing to say because it's actually part of how Allah created us. And Maybe it is a sign or letting us know that we're thinking about things in an unhealthy way, but it feels yucky, shame. And I think that is a huge barrier when we get into accidentally futuristically thinking about how it's going to look if I don't get it done. And so then we're trying to force ourselves to get it done instead of just relaxing into, okay, I'm just going to focus on this right now. What do you think of that, Abdul Bari? Are you still there, brother?
Yeah, I think your voice went out for a moment, but I think I got the gist of it, which is like the futuristic thinking is really the key word here, and kind of just being present.
Mm.
And that futuristic thinking comes from us, from nothing of having too much to do and stuff like that.
Yeah. See, I had a lot of thinking around things that I was going to have to tell people, look, I can't do it by that time. We need to postpone this. I need to delay that. I need to do this later. And that was getting me in the way of clarity. And the reality was that all of those different things that I had to push out, everyone was okay with them. So we create a lot of unnecessary tension for ourselves instead of just acceptance of what is. We're creating expectations beyond our capacity and feeling ashamed of ourselves that we can't meet those expectations. Well, we set ourselves up to fail in the first place. So just present in the moment and do what needs to be done now.
Exactly. Makes lots of sense. Jazakallah khairan.
Wayakum. Now I have a feeling um that I'm not sure if we've got a session happening in 1 minute, so we might have to wrap up. We've got time for one takeaway. Does somebody want to share a takeaway that they took from today?
Yes, Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome, salam wa ta'ala. Go ahead.
Just be for doing. Just don't be doing.
Yeah, it's more about being than doing. Yes,
Yes.
the doing is the product of being.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. We are caught. We get caught up in a lot of doing that we forget that we are being human being.
We're human beings, not human doings, and yet we
Yeah.
put the doing before the being. And in fact,
Yeah.
this is what we're trying to point to: is there's a lot of focus on the doing to become the being, and it doesn't work that way. It's the other way round.
Yes. Subhanallah. Jazakallah khair. It answered my clouded thinking since morning. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Well, on that note, just in case there is a session that needs to use the room, we better wrap up here. Jazakallah khair for joining today. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.